Hello, everybody. Welcome to Freestyle Talks. This is Carlos Jovaldo, your host from Mozambique, Maputo. Welcome to one more edition of our talks here. This time, another edition in English, as I have a very special guest from my neighbor country, South Africa. Uh, I've met I met Danny Tong, my guest, last year, around on October, no, uh, at the end of the year, I think it was in November, in the end of November in the Southern Africa Startup Awards in Johannesburg. I was there to represent my organization where I work, MUVA, and Danny was one of the main speakers of the event for 2 days. And I was blown away by his wisdom, by his experience, his charisma. So I introduced myself to Danny. I told him I would like to stay in touch with him, to pick his brain, to be connected, and to keep him as a mentor moving on as I go into my own journey as an entrepreneur. So when I started Freestyle Talks, I invited Danny uh, a couple of weeks ago to join me as a guest, and I'm very happy he said yes. So we are here to make it happen. So I'm very excited to have this conversation. I'm going to call Danny to join me here. Welcome, Danny Tong, to Freestyle Talks.
Hi, Carlos. Thanks a lot for welcoming me. Lovely to be here. Yeah.
Thank you, Danny. So as I was telling you, everybody who's listening to us and people, let me encourage you to use your chat button. Either if you are watching on Facebook or on YouTube, please interact with us and send us comments, questions. Danny and I are here to have a conversation, and you are part of the conversation. So Danny, first of all, thank you very much for doing this. Uh, we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks now, and I'm very excited. We are making it happen. And we were talking before about the crazy times we are living. So
Yeah.
these moments are very special because they bring us light and inspiration, and we stay in touch and connected. And and as we are going through COVID times, where sometimes the message is to stay away, this is a great way to stay in touch.
Mm. Yes. No, definitely. Definitely. There's a great a platform to use, particularly the digital environment that we're living in at this point in time. It's always been there. I think we've just been put in a position to appreciate it more.
Or being forced to appreciate it, right? Because as Stephen and I spoke, so he said something like the the COVID times we are living are speeding time, right? So we are pushing 2025 to 2020 in some
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. No. 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 Very true. Very true.
Yes, and how are you and your family? Are you all safe? Is everybody okay?
By grace, Carlos, hey, by grace of mercy, all within the family, within our organizations have been safe. Yeah, so certainly, I mean, there haven't hasn't been any cases within the immediate family members. We've had few cases within our organizations far stretched, but fortunately with Messi, those were cleared as well. So yeah, so we quite blessed, I believe. Yeah.
That's very good. I'm glad to hear that. So, Danny, we propose to talk about the journey of an entrepreneur, but
Yeah.
for people who don't know who Danny Tong is, so in the art, we introduce you as the CEO of Investong, and Investong is a group of companies, as we know. But tell me more about the first about Investong and in which areas are you guys working? Which type of companies you own and or which industries you operate?
Okay. So Investong as a formalized business started way back officially in 2006, and we've doubled into different industries ever since. As I started as a serial entrepreneur and explored a lot of avenues. I've always been a sales guy, being very aggressive in trying new things, and all I knew growing up was really selling, because I grew up from a family of actually business people. Because my dad was had small businesses within the village that he was running with my mom. So that's all I really knew, Carlos. So currently now, from having started formally when I went out of family businesses and started my own in 2006, when I formally actually got the company registered, we went into different streams of sectors. But we 4 years ago we started sort of restructuring and sort of aggregating all these businesses into one holding company, which is currently now called Investong Group of Companies. We play within the human capital space, which is the business that really gave life to what Investong does as a brand and the other sectors that we're in. We have an IT company. We have a construction business within the infrastructure space. We have a consulting engineering, civils and structural. And we also have a facilities management business, which plays within the cleaning and security space. But we pretty much do almost any service offered to property development, which is your overall maintenance of a property. And what we also doing, we've doubled into the commercial retail, where we're setting up franchises, particularly now within the building space. So we do bulk supplies as a distribution center using our franchise license, and that fits very nicely into the business that we do. But then, sort of under a housed brand, as we bought the franchise, and we're scaling that and setting those out, planning to set them out throughout the country, starting now within the two provinces that we predominantly play in. We have vast interest in different sectors. We've just doubled into the property development space very recently, and there the idea is being part of the entire value chain as well. And it's been a sector that we've been really quite interested for the long time, but needed a lot of study on its own. And there's interest within the mining sector, the agricultural space. So it's all of that. The model we're using, perhaps, Carlos, to put all of this into context, is that we operate to the model of mergers and acquisition, right? So I think one is getting old, Carlos, and to start these businesses from scratch every time is a bit of a snack, I love that though. I feel alive when that happens. But also just realizing that there's actually more value that one can contribute in turning businesses around. So the interest is also into buying operating business that have potential to scale, and we help them out in that scale. Hence the group, and hence then the model is acquisition, which now we're very aggressive. 2021 is going to be the year that we're going to be introducing our massive acquisitions, playing into the mainstream economy as well, which we have, built up for the longest time to get to. So, yeah.
And you guys are operating in South Africa only, or already operating in other countries in the region?
So our footprint is currently in South Africa, right? We've developed a strategy to penetrate the SADC region, and also why the interest, where I ended up spending about 2 years in Rwanda, in Kigali, doing my master's, was also to build those relationships and penetrate parts of Africa as our current strategy. We have a plan, Carlos, if I may share, that within the next 5 years we need to be double within the Johannesburg Stock Exchange in South Africa. So we're positioning ourselves in a way that we are listed in 5 years, and part of to get to that point, there's a lot of aggression that needs to come with that. So we need to be very aggressive in the markets that we play in. So yeah, just to answer you shortly, Carlos, is that we operate within South Africa with a very huge desire and plans put in place to penetrate the SADC region and Africa as a whole. Yeah.
So from I told you that last year. I think if you need anything in Mozambique from this side, I'm here to support, to help, or to be eyes and ears
Yeah.
to facilitate anything you need from this side. Then you know that, then Danny.
Trust me, I'm gonna hold you to that. Eh? I'm so gonna
Now,
hold
please
you.
feel free, man. I'm
Yeah.
here to do that. And as you said initially, that everybody in the company and family is safe from COVID. I want to also ask you about the impact of COVID in the business side. So, how are the companies adapting, adjusting to the new times and these struggles?
Yeah. So COVID has had a quite a huge impact in our business. But for me, I always looked at it, as it was happening. I mean, I think most of us that really study markets, I think that push to have a foresight. COVID had happened 3 months prior. I mean, you could have started planning and predicting what would possibly happen. But I think with grace as well, we were in industries that were able to help us run and be able to sustain business, our business basically. And I think diversifying on our end, having diversified into different portfolios, assisted us so that when one business was struggling, the other one was able to leverage from what was happening within the COVID space, right? I'll make an example. I mean, facilities management, which is your cleaning and security. That's one business that, regardless of what's happening, assets need to be guarded. So that had to be, obviously, it was categorized as an essential service. So we are able to still operate. And you can imagine within COVID being an issue that, that speaks into hygiene. So there's no way that you'll want to take away cleaning services. So that business as well remained operating as an essential service, and we wanted to find ways as well to play and sort of increase our pipeline within the unfortunate opportunities that were created by COVID as well. So when everybody was sort of in a shock, and I don't want to downplay the effect of COVID, but as that was happening, for me, I remember a time when I was just sitting all by myself and actually planning and say, what's actually happening here in the world. And I said, I can either sit in the house, and just crawl into my blankie and hope that I'll wake up tomorrow and everything will be okay, or I start understanding the world that we kind of facing and that we may end up living in. And I also put myself in a position to ask myself, are there opportunities that are cropping up from this emanating economy that is coming? And these are questions that gave me context, and context that boosted my morale to say there is an opportunity here, regardless of what happens post-COVID. It's a decision for us to make. Do you want to play in that space, or do you want to act like a victim within that space? And I, by no means, take anything away from those that are affected by COVID, and they could not even pivot or create strategies or find ways to survive. And I sympathize with those businesses, right? But I also say, where there's an opportunity for you to sort of interrogate yourself, I think even now it's more relevant to actually do that, because COVID is not over, and I don't think we're gonna, be having COVID out of our lives anytime soon. I think I was having a conversation not so long ago with a few of my associates. I'm like, every plan, imagine you're trying to plan today, because the argument was, How do you plan when you don't know what tomorrow is going to present? I'm like, no, that's nonsense. You have an opportunity to plan within an unpredicted sphere. But that's what business is about, regardless of what the situation and what the environment is, you are forever facing a foresight. You're never sure of foresight, right? So foresight, you're predicting. So it's the very same principle of your frame of mind that you use to predict and say, this is the commotion. And I said to them, if you actually, when you're able to survive, and not only survive and grow as a business within this time that we're living in within COVID, trust me, post COVID, you'll be one of those companies that will have stood the time, that will have built so much chutzpah. So in Israel, they call it chutzpah, right? The Jews perhaps will tap into that later on. You build that, there will be absolutely nothing that puts you in a position where you are challenged as a business, right?
Mhm.
So you'll sort of soundproof you proof your business in a way that nothing can actually challenge it, regardless of what happens within the environment or external factors, right? And I think that's what entrepreneurs need to be about, to say, regardless of what may be presented to me, um, I will be able to see the business through and to see myself through.
In the other day, I saw a podcast about a businessman I follow, Patrick Bet David, and he was talking about how a very interesting cycle uh, between times. When we are in tough times build strong people,
Yeah.
and strong people build good times, and good times build weak people, and weak people build bad times, and then it comes back. So we are facing a bad time, and those who survive and who prosper during this time are strong people and strong companies and a strong economy, as you were saying. And
Very
yeah,
true.
so it's
Yeah.
very interesting, this cycle. And the other
Yeah.
thing then is that I also think that there is also a very positive message out of this, is that as we are struggling and companies are having to adjust, people working based on home, and we are watching that it is possible actually to have a company operating with a less heavy structure. So it's not needed to. It's not actually necessary to have a fancy building, a very expensive office, furniture, a lot of stuff we previously had as a, a requisite to have a company. You can
Mm.
now have good people and internet and connection, and you can have a business operating. So I
Yeah.
think moving forward, it's also a very important lesson to take forward, and it's also a very good opportunity for entrepreneurs and people who want to start businesses to see,
Mm.
actually, I don't need all that much. A perfection is not needed. All I need
Yeah.
is a good idea, strong
Mm.
will, and a computer and a cell phone.
Yeah. No, 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 definitely, definitely. I mean, the face of starting a business as a startup has changed completely, and one of the countries that represent that principle very well, Carlos, is it's Israel, right? So in Israel, no business gets to be started purely on the basis of the current market they have in the country, right? Knowing that it's a very small country, so they don't have enough market that they can service. So every business it started on the backdrop of the global market, right? So it's the same thing, where there is a huge leverage of technology that can be used, and here's what gets to me, Carlos, is that the way, and I don't know how you guys deal with it in Mozambique, but here in South Africa, we have a challenge of how we have positioned entrepreneurship by itself, by virtue of what it means, how it gets to be done. And there's this stigma slowly it's being proven wrong. But that stigma actually says that if you cannot do anything else and you need to survive, go into business. If you cannot do anything else, and I think it's so sad as a country that has such a highest level of unemployment rate, like South Africa, that we do not see the just how that the I don't want to say the Messiah, right? But one of the solutions that can take us out of this pit hole that we're in is small businesses. And allow me to interrogate myself a bit and say, actually, not small businesses, a startup. Because what I'm challenging now with you, Carlos, is that we've been made to believe that entrepreneurship is it's one of the lowest things that you can ever do, because when you do business, it means that you could not succeed anywhere else. You could not become a doctor, you could not become a teacher or policeman, you could not. So you just had to do something so that you end up eating and you don't go to sleep hungry, which should not be the face of what entrepreneurship is about. Entrepreneurship should be about a culture. It should be a culture where we say it's one of the careers that you need to follow when you know that you want to make an impact, but not just impact, a positive impact and at a scale. And that impact it must be clear and deliberate, be deliberate about it, that it must be an economical impact. And there's nothing wrong with wanting profit, right? The moment there's that thinking, so you're not wiring a person to do business just because they want to fill their tummy, but you're saying look for problems that you can solve within either your community, within the global context, within South Africa, within your province, regardless where you are, right? And say, this is the problem that I'm seeing. I'm going to create a solution for it. And I believe the solution, this is how it's going to change people's life. Or this is the service or product that it's going to deliver, which will have this kind of impact. And by so doing, it's more so less about feeding myself, but I'm feeding my soul and I'm feeding my purpose. And guess what? The moment you find your purpose and you feel that, everything else, it's like the universe kind of, gravitates towards that objective, whatever that goal is that you're working towards. So if that whole notion can, and that stigma, I think it's a process. We get in there, but it needs to be accelerated, right? Because it's so sad to see young people going into business for wrong reasons. It's very sad, because you get a person that has worked for 15 years, they want to cash out their retirement and start a franchise. They want to cash out, and because uncle works at the tender department, they say, okay, no, he's going to help me out and I'm going to get a tender. Oh, fortunately, they get that tender, but that's all they can do. They get one tender, they get the second one, they get the third one. But I promise you, give it 5, 10 years, that person, because they not build, they don't have the resilience, and they're not driven by solution, by purpose, by what they're doing. They're purely driven by making sure that they have clothes in their bags, the tummy is full, kids go to school, and it's all good and well, but it cannot be the only sole driver of you wanting to tap into the business world.
No, I totally agree. And it's about wrong reasons and also about illusions, because many people think about that, the lifestyle and I'm going to be a big shot, or I'm going to be famous or influential, and it shouldn't be about that. And it's
Mhm.
very powerful what you said, that actually the right reason to start a business is to solve problems. So if your business is not solving any problem, it doesn't make sense.
No, no, no.
Yeah.
It cannot. Business is about, it's purely about solving a problem.
Hmm.
Mm.
Very interesting. And tell me one thing. You said initially about your father who owned a business, small business, right? Tell me
Yeah.
about your life. Who was Danny around 12 years old? Where were you? How was your life, your family, your community? Take me back there.
Wow. Yeah. So how was I when I was 12? I was very rebellious, I must say, right? I was not a typical 12-year-old that you'll find in the street playing soccer, doing all these activities that young people would do at that age. At 12, I can shamefully or unshamefully say this, but I didn't play soccer. I didn't do any of those things. When my counterparts were doing all these things, I was selling. So my dad was very frank with me, you know. This is what we're doing. This is the business. From school, you go to the shop. From school, you take whatever that we're selling that needs to be sold, and you get on the street and you go sell. Weekends, that's all I did. And in my spare time, because I had developed this relationship with money, with transaction, with changing, you know. So for me, it was always, no, if you want something from me, what are you giving me back? You know, what's in it for me? What's the return? So I was very transactional, right? So what then happened is I started within my free time tap into gambling, right? So I would I would I would play. I was a very good pool table player, right? We call it snooker
Yeah.
uh, back then. So I played that a lot, and I was one of the best players. And I went around, did tournaments and all, and we were betting. So I was associated to a particular team. But for me, that was purely for money, I must say, right? And I did a whole lot of other things. I mean, I sold at school, but I sold my own, sort of products and stuff. And when I got home, then I would then sell my boss stuff, which is my dad, right? And so that went on. I mean, for the longest time, I think till I matriculated and did a stunt with the college. Um, so it was always within the same cycle. But let me take back slightly within that period. During that period, was fortunate that my sister, one of my sisters, her name is Isha, right? She early on, my mom was worked for this family as a domestic worker, and lovely lady, Sue Armstrong, right? Dr. Sue Armstrong, very, very lovely lady. And she took my sister in, right? Adopted my sister in a way and took my sister through to preschool, school, the works. And my sister actually became her daughter in a way. And my sister never really got exposed to the life that we lived back home, which is Northwestern town, right? And so what then happened, every holidays I'll visit, I'll go that side. And my sister had this accent with her going to a white school and all of that. But I would always ask, how come? Why is my sister speaking funny? You know, and it tricked me so much. And my dad said, if you wanna speak like her, you gotta read. You gotta read. You gotta read so much. And I said, oh, is it? Okay, I'm gonna try this out. Then I asked my sister, what do you read? And what happened is every time during school holidays, my sister will stack books that they read. I think she'll probably even steal books from school, um, and send them over. And when I go that side, I'll find them. And my mom will also stack magazines, whole lot of stuff. And Carlos, I went through all of that reading. By the time I was during my matric, I would like to believe, I'm convicting myself to say, I think I was very good, you know, speaking and good. By good is good on the virtue of my surroundings where I am, right? And I was like, I was very, very good. My English, I was like, then there's a trick here, right? So, and my knowledge as well was very broad. I think somebody should have told me what kind of material I should read. So that also played a role because I was reading a whole lot of magazines. I was reading about, I remember Brad Pitt was my best actor. So I was reading a lot of you. So I was reading Dr. Sue Armstrong's material, I must say, right? So whatever that she was reading, and they'll stash it up as well and bring it home, and I'll read that. So I knew so much of what she wanted to consume as her own. So yeah, so that's the material that I read. I knew quite a lot, but the trick there for me was I understood the importance of knowledge. Because beyond everything else, what that exercise taught me is that there is a whole new world out there that we're not exposed to. So I'll sit in my corner, like I'll go to school. Mind you, I'm in a rural village, right? And I'm attending school in a rural village. Don't tell me about a cell phone. I have no idea what a cell phone is, let alone internet, all these other fancy things, right? But I started questioning myself on everything. And I started asking questions, I started having this inquisitive mind, and I will encode things that I'm reading, right? And there, I think that's where the whole bubble of wanting to know more came from. And I think it tied very nicely with me having to be within the business front, particularly within the sales and working for my dad at the time. So I think those were the combinations that I would like to believe that I juggled very, very well. So yeah, that has been my journey. And yeah, I think, and I'll use my sister Isha, which I love dearly. I'll use her as my demo every time, and every time when we meet, that's my best time ever because I get to speak this language now, freely, and without having to be kind of so ostracized in a way.
Mhm. No, I
You-
totally understand.
yeah,
Two
yeah.
and two questions, Danny. One of them, w- were you a good student at school, interested in math or in language in English, or did you have any preference subject at school,
Save your
or were
energy.
you bad at it?
Save your energy, my brother. Let me just say, I was the worst student ever at school. The
Mm-hmm.
worst. But being the worst, I think I was knowledgeable,
Mm-hmm.
but I was not the excellent academia student, right? I was
Mm-hmm.
that guy that makes a lot of noise and that is inquisitive, that is asking almost everything. By virtue of doing that, also you'll realize that actually I didn't do my homework and I've got no clue what's happening in class. So yeah, I failed a couple of times, I must say, right? And so yeah, I wasn't. I was definitely. I think I was the worst. Probably I was the first student from the back line, right from the back. Yeah, that's certainly that was me.
Okay. And your parents, how did they reacted to that those times at school?
They always knew that I was a troublesome child.
Mm-hmm.
So that one, I think it was just a given to them because the amount of sessions and meetings they had to engage in with principals and teachers on my wrongdoings and a whole lot of things that I did. That, oh Lord, forgive me. Um, they knew. I mean, they knew that I wasn't. I was a really rebellious child. So I'll give you just an example of or one of the cases that happened. So in during my high school times, I was doing a grade 10 at the time, and I I had I used to have dreadlocks, right? And then
Oh, I
I
can't imagine that.
I took the dreadlocks out that year, so I was chiscop like I am now. But I felt that something was lacking, so I wanted. So for thing about me is I always, as much as I was a slow student, I always wanted to be on the front line. So I remember very well the conversation I had with myself to say, what can I do to effect about change in this school and be seen as a leader in this school? And I understood that students were not happy about not putting on dreadlocks. And I kind of researched around the matter. And I realized that no, dreadlocks are not forbidden as a hairstyle within the academia space or within the education sphere. And I took that as my task. And I said, I'm going to make sure that in this school there'll be dreadlocks. And I took that as my mission. Story short, we went through a whole lot of riots, and I led a march. I think the school curriculum stopped for about a good 3 months, and we finally got our dreadlocks. And the following year, no, it was actually the same year when I was doing my grade 12. I must say this, as embarrassing as it is, I knew that I was going to fail, right? And funny enough, I passed that year. But what I'm not happy about, or rather, what still saddens me to this day, is that most of my counterparts failed, and even the one that supported the march and that believed in the march. So what I used to do is, we'll march and we'll do everything that we did. But because I loved reading so much, I'll come back home and I'll still study. During exam, I did that. I'll read. So if I wasn't reading, I was working. If I wasn't working, I was reading. So that's what happened. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we received a very interesting question, and thank you for the question about what tips can you left to people, to entrepreneurs, on how to sustain a momentum for a long time, as you have a 14 years journey as an entrepreneur. But my idea, Danny, if you allow me, is to come back to this question later on and
Okay.
to reply to Samantha, as we are going now into this stage of your childhood and teenage years, and I don't want to stop this topic. We go back later to Samantha's question. So as we move on until maybe 18, 20 years, who was Danny back then, at that time?
So at the time, when I was 18, I did a stunt of prior to my stunt. So I remember, after passing my matric, I had to my dad asked that I take a gap year and look after my sister, who was in primary, getting into middle school, into secondary school at the time. So I spent that year with my baby sister. Her name is Tumi, back home, and so I was doing that, and at the same time, I was also looking out and for my dad's small business. We had two businesses. It was a poultry farm and the community shop. So I was juggling the two, and post that, I went to the Joburg City to study. I did IT, and the reason I studied IT is because I read a book by Bill Gates, being at the time the richest man on the planet at the time. And I said, one thing I know about myself is I want to be rich, and ugo rich. How do I do that? So, like, why don't I then study those that have done so? And I picked up his book, and I thought, okay, he's in IT. That means that's the industry I need to get into as well to be rich. So I did that. So I went to IT, didn't know anything about what IT is about. Had I registered and they say you're gonna start mixing chemicals and become a scientist, I would say, okay, that's fine. Whatever it was, I was game for it. So I did the first year. I don't know how it happened, but I passed. Did the second year, and I failed miserably. But that's the same year when I was repeating, doing that year again, I got an opportunity from CTS South Africa, which is an organization from the US brought to South Africa by Bill Clinton, the former president of Bill Clinton, with a conversation with Madiba. And then they brought the organization to South Africa, which then within the same year, the organization took me to the States as one of the young leaders to represent young South African leaders, in terms of telling South African story to the global funders and global corporates, in terms of support that is needed this side. and also meeting other CTS South African leaders across the globe. And we spent some time in the US, and I think that's where everything else made sense for me. I think coming back from that trip, I must say that trip when we went to the US, I was stocked up. That was a great business opportunity for me. I sold South Africa. Also, I did a whole lot of African prints where I sold almost everything, and I sold it in dollars. When I came back from US, I cashed about 30,000 Rand. And for me, I was like, yo, this is possible. This can happen. Actually, the more you have and you create a market and a reliable market, you can actually make more. And that was it. I think that the seed was I just kind of got an aha moment, both from the perspective that I've got when I got to the US, the engagements that I've had within the US, and the young people that I consulted and interacted with, and the forums that we've had as well. I mean, we had a good 1 hour session with Bill Clinton, and for if you can sit over next to Bill Clinton and shake hands and have a conversation for an hour, for me, that changed my psyche, right? Told me that anything is possible in life. Remember, during my secondary period, I was reading quite a lot, and I could see this world that was not within my periphery, right? But that kind of cemented everything. That just made sense. No, there's absolutely no limit. I can. That's the same that Bill was also preaching. There's absolutely no limit. I came back and I'm like, I'm done. I'm the next Bill Gates. And I carry that throughout, to this day. But I must say, even to date, my parents never knew that I failed my second term, and for the longest time they thought I completed my 3-year diploma in IT, and I could not tell them. But no, I didn't. I dropped out, unfortunately. But be that as it may, I believe as a young person growing up, explore all avenues that you kind of feel right about, And I'm glad, for some funny way, that I took the route that I took and I dropped out, because I don't think I appreciated education then than I do now, right? And I think had I followed that route, I still would not appreciate it. I have value for education at this point, and I've gone all out to ensure that I equip myself and I study and I do all kinds of things to keep my mind sharp. I study for knowledge. I don't study for a paper. It's just that it's great that the paper follows the knowledge, right? So yeah, I'm hoping I'm answering your question, Carlos.
Yes, definitely. And I, I actually wanted to ask you about that because I know you have been studying recently. So you finished a step later, a couple of months ago, I believe, and you are now going to PhD, right, as a PhD candidate. So I think that's a result of a maturity stage of Danny as a person and Danny as a man. That something was, I've achieved the platform in the business area. I'm a grown up man. I know who I am, and I want to know more, and I want to go to the next level. And that part maybe was something you felt that can push me forward, can take me to the next level I need to be or to achieve as a man.
I may have lost the question there, Carlos.
No, I was telling maybe it's all about timing. So this was the right time for you to carry on studying, and
Yeah.
studying because you felt it and because you really wanted it, and not because it was trendy or because parents or family pushed you. So it was
Yeah.
your time.
That's very correct. I studied for a purpose. I studied for a reason, right?
Mhm.
And the studies were to complement the direction and the path I was taking already. I did not study to create a path, right? So I created a path for myself, and within that path, I realized the tools I need to journey through that path. And then that's where study became so critical for me to say, where do I get these tools? I get these tools from knowledge, right? And now let me equip myself. So once you take that kind of approach, you end up studying for what's relevant and what you need, right? So it's no longer about a path that has been created to say after your grade 12. I'm not sure what you call it as matriculate once you're done with high school, and then you get into college, and then you realize that, oops, this course is full, I can't do this, I'll try another one. That is also full, then you try another one. I'm not saying that's wrong, Carlos. You see, but I'm just saying perhaps a different approach can also be helpful. How that approach comes, I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. It's just that it worked for me. And I would just advise that perhaps becomes the approach. How that comes about, I'm really not sure. So I'm fortunate that that's the path that I had to follow now within my academia journey, right?
And it's also a lesson that it's never late to keep growing and to keep learning. So there's never a time to stop learning, and we are never big enough or rich enough or old enough to stop learning and growing as people.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. So we have a very interesting question here. Maybe as you spoke about the importance of books in your childhood.
Yeah.
Samantha is asking about some advices on good books for entrepreneurs and business inspiring people to read.
Okay, let me do this. Give me a second.
And thank you, Samantha, for sending your questions. And I'm still saving the last question. That one before.
I'm currently reading 3 books, right? So 5-Day Weekend. So by Nick Halleck. I'm also reading The 4, Scott Gallum. And this, I've read this book. I think now it has become my Bible, right? Very Simon Sinek, never disappoints, smart with why, right? And we've been preaching a lot on this conversation about the purpose. Now, this is one of the books that is very critical to perhaps start with within the entrepreneurship journey. It just helped me to understand what my purpose is about, right? And sort of direct that. Mind you, purpose is it's a process, and allow it to either enhance, change, develop, whatever the case is. But it can't be stagnant. It's a process as you go along, and that has happened for me, and hence it always keeps within my shelves, because the principles are the same, but I'll read it and I'll have a different aha moment, at any level within my journey. So I would say definitely start with Why as the best book to read. The other 2 are really my current reads now, and actually love them. Especially The 4. The 4 speaks into what's happening now. One of the best companies in the world. It looks into the likes of Amazons and then Facebook, and how they came about, right? And we're living in that space. Remember, we're in the pandemic, right? And these companies, what they're saying is, within the face of adversity, when things are falling apart, that's when great companies come up, right? That's when best and great global businesses get to get an opportunity. And I also strongly believe personally that this process that we're in now, it's a great opportunity for small businesses to be integrated into the mainstream economy, because big business right now, they're struggling, and big business don't usually have a cushion, right? And they're not as agile as small businesses are, right? And I believe that with the right mindset, startups can start building scalable global platforms that becomes businesses, you know,
Mhm,
driven as you rightfully said earlier on by the pressure that we're in now. So that pressure is an opportunity.
mhm. And also, McKevin Ayaba and I spoke about the importance of ecosystems and startups uh,
By
being
the
there
right.
for each other and being there and helping each other uh, and not working isolated. And that's much easier for startups than
Yeah.
for big companies. And building a platform, sharing information, helping each other, everybody grows.
Mm, mm. I have great respect for McKevin Ayaba. Great guy, great friend. Um, he is driven by the African ecosystem, right? And he is creating that ecosystem, and is creating platforms that young African businesses can get an audience, right? And interact and link and connect with each other. And there's so much power there, because I don't believe that we still appreciate, or we've reached a point where we can appreciate the ecosystem that entrepreneurs ought to have. I will not start getting into what the role that government needs to play in supporting that type of ecosystem. We can look at different countries that are for an ecosystem. Israel will always be my reference. Rwanda, Kigali will always be my reference in terms of deliberately guiding and galvanizing towards creating an ecosystem that works for entrepreneurs. That is very, very critical. So
Mhm.
Mikhail is one of those people that, for me, in Africa, he represents that very well, and I'm quite grateful to call him a good friend of mine. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great guy. And we were lucky to have him on the show a couple of weeks ago. So it was a great talk. And I also advise people to take a look into that conversation with McKevin Ayaba.
Oh,
So,
lovely.
Danny, going back to your journey of an entrepreneur, what was your first official or real serious company, or formal company? And then the follow-up question is, and when did you felt you made it as an entrepreneur? Your When a business really started to make money, or to be profitable, or to have a success, you felt, I got something here.
So the first business was a clothing company that I felt that I formalized, and I felt that I have a business here, as you rightfully put it, right? So I started a clothing brand called Pewa Clothing, and it was more the retro, um, cultural hippie type of a wear, right? And I put together. I fortunately managed to put together a brand that created a market for itself and created a demand for itself. And I partnered with a great guy, Temba Dube is his name. He was from Zimbabwe, and he was a good uh, manufacturer, producer, designer. So we teamed up. He handled the back end of the business in terms of operations, manufacturing, designs, all of that. I handled the sales and marketing and strategy of the business on the forefront, right? And we built a good business, and we supplied. Fortunately, in Gauteng, we had a lot of markets, from flea markets, shop owners, across that we supplied, and we were on the verge of with a deal with Edcon, to supply some of the Edcon stores. As you will know, that the Edcon would be that Edgar's group, right? And it's within that transaction that myself and my dear former business partner Temba could not see eye to eye, and we had to part ways. And we parted ways at the stage within the transaction. We could not find our middle ground, and that compromised the deal that we had on the table. And when that happened, I sold my share. I sold my stake. Wasn't as really a sizable amount, but it was good enough to help me go for a couple of months while I was jumping into some other things. And there, what happened was, if I may share that, post that, 6 months down the line, I was flat broke, flat broke. And those were my early years. So those were my testing times, a new territory altogether of not having within this bubble that I was living in, which was in Joburg, all by myself. And that's where reality hit, of business and how tough business is, So went through the whole typical process that happens, I mean, got my car repossessed at the time, parted ways with the mother of my daughter at the time. Things were just, whole lot of things were just happening with my life, and I got into a very bad shape. So that's the first business, and that's my first experience, right? So yeah.
And the successful business?
So the successful, yeah. So the successful business has to. So from there, I moved from that failure to the next failure to the next failure to the next failure, and the successful business really was mainly 3 years ago, about 2.5 years ago now, that we restructured and regrouped into a holding company. That's the period that things were shaping up, through a whole lot of other things that happened in between, right? So one will have a wave and then drop. But when that happened to a point where now we structured a holding business, that was the best moment ever. And at the time, when also prior to that was when both my sisters joined the business. They came at different periods, right? So the first one came in, which was Isha, and I must say that was one of my best. I think that was my biggest moment ever in business, when my sister came on board and handled operations of the business. And knowing what she was doing from her former employer and what she was capable of doing, and having trusted the business and myself, that she will be able to turn around and which she put her family at risk. And I recognize that, right? So that was one of the best moments. And later in the years, I think 2 years down the line, then came our youngest sister, which is Dumi, who also came into the business. So those seem quite more family orientated, personal, but those were one of my best successful moments, because I realized the importance of what I was creating, and I realized the value that they were adding to that journey. Had it not been this team that came in, had it not been them that came in, I don't think I'll be having this conversation with you, Carlos. I don't think you would have seen anything of value to request a conversation with me, right? So they made it their mission for us to push this brand and this business to what it is today. Post all of that, recruitment was the business that really gave us a brand positioning and a market share, and really to understand what we were doing by virtue of wanting to create a reputable business. And it's the recruitment company that then allowed a whole lot of other businesses to be formulated.
No, very interesting. And I'm going back now to that question we parked away before, because there is this idea that entrepreneurship is a lonely journey, it is a lonely road, and it is, but you cannot make it alone, actually. And once again, you are an example of that. That the importance of having a support, the importance of having people who believe in us and who push us, even if we are doing it alone, knowing that people have our back, give us a lot of strength and courage to move on. So tell me and respond maybe to Samantha's question about the being a lonely journey in many moments, uh, the importance of having a support and a structure, and how it is also to maintain the drive and the passion and this ambition and vision.
You need a very supportive structure. You need to have a structure that has your back, Carlos, and there's no two ways about it. And the statement that entrepreneurship is a lonely journey, it remains as is. Entrepreneurship, it's a very, very lonely journey. And you'll find that if you do not have a strong support that is for you and that believes and willing to go to all ends to just ensure your well-being in, just that psychologically you okay, that in any other aspects they try and help and support as much as they can. I was very fortunate. I think by God's mercy, I'm so grateful that I was born within the family that I'm born in. I feel such a huge privilege that I have the parents that I have my sisters, that I have the community, the neighbors that I had, the friends that I got associated with, everybody that I've met through my journey. I believe that one way or the other, they've had a contribution towards my journey. But most importantly is that you need people that are for you and people that are very close to you. So for me, it was definitely my family,
Mm.
um and particularly my two sisters. When things fell apart, they were always there, always. And that's the support structure you. I am becoming the man I've always dreamt about becoming because of them, because they've always been in my corner. I've completed my master's last year, 2 years with a struggling business while having to study and travel in and out of Kigali in Rwanda. How did I do that with a struggling business? I had my two sisters. As bad as it was with the business, they said, it doesn't matter. We'll handle it. Just go and do your thing. How am I doing it now with a PhD that needs 9, 10, 15 hours of research every day, that I still have a growing, demanding business? It's my sisters, you know. It's just that connection that we have and that understanding and that self-giving of themselves to say, you have our back, we have your back. I feel that they have more of my back than I have theirs, because I can't put it into context, into words, how much I believe they've allowed me to be who I am, and believed in what we're working towards as family, right? And I'll be forever grateful. So to answer Samantha directly is, you need to find that support structure. It's important. It does not mean, though, if you don't have that support you can't start. No, but you will recognize that you don't have it, but you still start, right? But it would be great if you did have it.
And let me give you a very simple example of even the talk show we are doing now at Freestyle Talks, this podcast. Uh, you know, I always tell my friends, I'm capable of doing this at home because my wife is keeping my kids quiet in the living room, and I'm using my kids' bedroom to actually transmit live and
Mm,
broadcast. So
mm,
if they are doing a lot of noise, this is not happening. If they are using internet, my internet is slow. So
mm,
Carlos is the one who appears in the show. I'm the face. I'm the star in the show. But this is only possible because my wife is doing a great job helping me. and keeping my kids quiet for 2 hours sometimes, So it is always a teamwork.
Yeah. I like that very much, Carlos, because the face of Investing is always this that is seen on the forefront, right? But people have no idea the people that are sweating behind this face.
Mhm.
There are people that are doing the mechanics of things behind this face, and those are the people that one truly believe that they actually supposed to be the forefront and taking all these accolades, right? And all this
Mhm.
recognition. There's no way, there's no way that I would be the one who has sort of produced all of this that we're working towards with the plans that we have moving forward. No ways. So I fully agree with what you're saying. It's the team that is never seen that is behind
Mhm.
you.
Yeah. And Sydney, and shout out to Sydney. He also sent us a couple of interesting questions. One of them is, what are your thoughts about innovation on business models? And the second one is, what are the main aspects you look into a business before making a decision of acquisition?
Okay, so two things we look into for acquisition. Firstly, is more about the lead of the business, the owner, the director of that business. Secondly, is the scalability of that business, right? So it's two things. And the leader, for me, the driver of that business needs to needs to have every aspect of what an entrepreneur is about, which the most key being just the tenacity not to give in when you fail. So I want a person that would say, it does not matter how many times I'm going to fail, but I'm going to stand up and move. And a person that is not worried about failing and what the impact of what failure will have to himself or to whoever else, him or herself, right? So a person that is so blindfolded towards failure, they don't recognize it, and should it happen, it's just a process of learning, right? And those are the two critical things. The third one would be that should that person have failed before, that's an advantage, right? Because as an entrepreneur, you're bound to fail. So it always helps to back a jockey that has that has fallen a couple of times, because if you back in them and they have not fallen, you always asking the next, then you come in and perhaps this could be the next knock. But as a backer as well, you must allow that to happen. Now the problem is, you can allow your partner to fail, but the challenge is, will they shake it off and move forward? That's the key thing. Because even if you're staring a person who you can see this person is going to fall, is going to fail, but you have the comfort that even when this person failed, this person is going to dust themselves, look at where the gaps were, where they went wrong, get that sorted, and move forward. We're growing, Carlos. Let me speak for myself, right? And the energy as well. There's no way that you cannot be backing young entrepreneurs that are coming. Those guys are very sharp. They've got minds we don't have, or rather, let me speak myself. They've got minds that I don't have. So I want to tap into their la la land, their dream world. And I want to be part of that. And selfishly so that I want to gain monetary value from it, and equally the part of the impact that they're going to bring to the world, right? And and I know that by virtue of being associated to them, there is something that I can equally share with these guys, as a support structure to make their journey much easier and acceptable. So it's all these things, and I think um, that ecosystem speaks into that as well, to say create an ecosystem that realizes that there is failure in business, and regardless of what that failure is, the ecosystem allows you to fail and still backs you up.
Mhm. Uh, and the aspect about innovation on business models?
Um, so you can't, you see, uh, you there's no way that you can have a business without a model, right? So you need to make sure that your business model is up to the teeth, right? How we've been talking about this quite a lot, and more so now within the pandemic, to say what can we do to leverage from technology, to leverage from innovation. So it's a great opportunity to make sure that whatever the business you start, the model is aligned to to leverage from technology, and equally so make sure that leverages from innovation. You see, we come from particularly where I come from and where I am right now. The school of thought says that you need to become an inventor. So if you innovate, you become an inventor. So you invent something. So you physically have to come up with a product that have never been seen before in the world, right? Invent a kettle that just does the things by itself and gets you tea, right? Invent all this, and it's not the case. So by virtue of having any business model, regardless how simple it is, they can be an they can it can easily be integrated into leveraging from technology as an innovation itself, right? For scalability of a business, a model is very critical, because a model gives you in a snapshot, gives you exactly how your business looks like as a framework, right? And helps you ensure that it reaches the levels that you want it to reach.
Great answer. And going back to that point about the acquisition, I think it's is a common mistake among entrepreneurs is that rush of getting an investor. We need to get money, we need someone to invest in our company. And most times it's too early, and people end up losing either the space to be the leaders of their vision, or sometimes the business is not ready yet, right? So it needs to be very careful about really understanding that sometimes what you need is not an investor, is just more clients. And people tend to think about investment as a solution, and it's not a solution sometimes. So it should be in the right moment, in the right time.
Very correct, Carlos. It's investment is not always in a currency value. It's not always just monetary. Um, I get very concerned when entrepreneur only sees money as value to build their business, because there are a lot of resources that you can draw from each other, that actually works towards filling the gap of needing monetary value contribution, right? So it's not always just about the rands and cents, that you would be needing for a business. No, I think we as entrepreneurs, particularly in South Africa, we fighting currently very hard, and I see it almost every time with young upcoming entrepreneurs, that we've tend to believe that that's the only way to get into business, that you need to get funding for business. Funding is the last stage of the business, and more so sometimes you end up not actually needing a cent from anyone, and most of the time, because you will find that, for in my case, I remember one of my initial business plans, I needed a laptop, I needed a printer, I needed a telephone, I needed an office to operate in, and all of that. And that was my first or my second business, the recruitment business, right? So what happened is, I had a friend called Murali from India, and he was an IT guy, IT specialist, based in here. He came particularly for a project, and we became friends. And said, "Danny, you don't need, you don't." So 'cause for me, I've costed all of that to say, you know what, if I can get about 60,000, I can run for 3 months running a recruitment agency from my mom's house. right? From my mom's place, I'm sorted. And he said, no, you know what? I understand, but you know what? I have a roof, I have a very strong internet, and I have a second-hand laptop that you can use. And you can come stay with me because part of your recruitment is IT. So some of the CVs before you submit to your client, I can just check them for you. So there I was negotiating with this gentleman to give me 60,000. And he said, all of these costs that you have are not necessary. Come through, I'll give you these resources. At my, at my place, I have a printer, I have all these things that you believe you need. And in actual fact, he could have given me the 60,000. I would have not achieved what I did with his presence and his contribution by virtue of offering himself and these resources. Because the key thing that he gave me more than anything else was his close proximity for me to keep checking with him every now and then. And that's how that recruitment business got off the ground. So the example there, it will not work for everybody, but the story there is, it's not always about the rands and cents that we believe we need. I think also just look at what are the resources and where else can I get these resources.
Mhm. And yeah, I think that's a great point. And also a note that investment is not, or it shouldn't be a shortcut. And many people see getting investment as a shortcut to speed up a success, or speed up the income and jump to the next stage of a company's journey. And it takes time, step by step, and it should, as you said, be the last stage, if necessary, and
If
not
not,
a shortcut to get there.
mm, mm, definitely, no, certainly.
Yeah. And then, yeah, on my side, I saved last question, and for me, is the most important question. We spoke a lot about the journey and the purpose, right? What's your purpose? What's guiding you right now as you move on into the next years? What's your purpose right now?
What a question, Carlos. My purpose is really to effect change to the society and communities where I come from, where I believe and know that they lack. My purpose is to change the mindset and have these people that I believe were at the same spot where I was, where I could not see beyond what the sight was giving me, right? So mine is to, number one, bring resources, create impact, and dignify those communities. How do I do that? By bringing economical activation. So part of what I do now is that all these opportunities that we get, we bring in them to the people, to communities, because we believe that by virtue of creating an economical activity in a particular community, you allowing them to have a foresight, or rather see possibilities of what can happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's powerful, and that's, I think it will keep you motivated and passionate about the next years and the next challenges who are coming in this up changing world all the time, right? So good luck. And on my side, Danny, I told you this previously. If you need anything from this side, if you need anything from me as a person and as a friend, count with me. I'm always available to support because I believe in you, and I really admire what you are doing.
Carlos, I highly appreciate it. Thank you very much for the audience. Much appreciated.
Yeah, and also, Danny, I told you that also that that trip to the Southern Africa Startup Awards last year really had an impact on me. Uh, and I told this to Stephen Reed when we spoke here. I'm a very, I do a lot of things. I am a writer, I organize events, I am an entrepreneur, I work in communications. So I do all sorts of stuff. And it's
Mm,
very difficult to find people who are like me. because if
Mm,
I'm in an environment of writers, I'm not quite like them, you know,
mm,
because I
mm,
do other things related to business. So my mindset is different than a
yeah.
common writer or than most writers in that sense. And when I'm with marketing people, I'm not quite like them. And and sometimes it's very lonely to really find people to relate with and to look up to and to pick people's brains. So I often
Mm,
find a lot of knowledge on internet, you know, on videos, on books. So people who are very decent. Uh, and that trip in that room in Johannesburg, I really felt at home. You know, I saw around a lot of
mm.
people who I
Love,
really connected
love.
with, and it
Yeah.
was the first time in many years where I
Mm,
actually felt, oh, these are my people, and that's
yeah.
why I was interacting and really and trying to connect and to be in touch. And I told that to Stephen Reed, and I'm telling this to you. I see you both as my mentors and people I really want to stay in touch and to learn and to ask you questions. And I really appreciate the time you always take to reply to my questions. And I've been asking you questions about business decisions. And I
Yeah.
really appreciate you taking your time to respond and to give me your advices and also to be here sharing your experience and your journey with me and my audience.
Anytime, Carlos. I'm more than happy to engage my brother anytime, and I will take you up on the offer as well. And yeah, I'm not sure if it's Johannesburg or Moz that we're meeting, but we meeting soon. Post COVID, you my next trip. Yeah.
That's it. That's a deal, my friend. Where can people stay in touch with what you are doing or Investong is doing? How can people reach you or stay connected with what you guys are doing?
All right. So we have our website, which is investong.co.za, and I'm also on Instagram at Tong1. And I'm also on Facebook as Denny Tong, also on LinkedIn. The company is Investong Group, also on Instagram and Facebook. So yeah.
Okay, so people check it out. Check investong.co.za and share information, spread knowledge, stay in touch, and help each other. And don't lose your vision and your passion, and find your purpose as well. And Danny, thank you
Yeah.
very much once again.
Thanks a lot. Much appreciated, Carlos. Be well.
And stay safe. And I'm really also eager to know your sisters in the close future and to really understand you all as a family and having an opportunity to interact with the three of you.
Lovely. That would be great. We'll be more than happy to do that.
Thank you, my friend, and stay safe.
Same to you, Carlos. Stay safe with your family. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. So that was Danny Tong, one of my mentors. So I'm really happy for having him on our show. Uh, one last piece of advice is really to, if you have a dream, if you have a passion, go forward, keep fighting, find people who support you and who believe in you, and build yourself and build your vision into a reality. And sometimes it is a lonely journey, but it's a journey that it's worth it. So take that journey because it's your journey. And stay connected and subscribe to Freestyle Talks channel, either on Facebook, either on YouTube, on Instagram. Stay connected. Check out the other talks we have available in Portuguese and in English. And we'll be coming back soon with more Freestyle Talks. And I'll see you soon. Stay safe, everybody. Carlos, bye bye.